We're live back with another episode of Promoters Corner. Steve, my normal guest, is here, along with Doug from Revolution Brewing, is our special guest today. How are you guys doing today?
Great.
Doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. So this is going to be a really fun kind of flashback watch along, because the series we've been doing with Steve and Eric has been all about kind of top five Warrior matches throughout the years. We're going to do a pivot today and talk about when Warrior invaded a brewery, Revolution Brewing. So, we're gonna, of course, talk about how the show happened and then get into the match. But before we get too deep into that, as we're recording this, it is the eve of the Royal Rumble, which is always one of my favorite events in all of wrestling throughout the calendar year. It's happening just up the road from us in Indianapolis. Let's chat about that a little bit. Any Rumble predictions from either of you guys on the men's, on the women's side?
Oh wow, going right into it.
Yeah, let's
Oh,
chat the Rumble.
So I don't know that I have a strong prediction on the guys' side. I think there's a lot of ways this can go, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Kevin and Cody match
hmm
if that's earlier, because I can see a world where Kevin wins and Sami Zayn wins the Rumble, and we get Kevin and Sami in the title match, and Cody splits off to do something else. I can see a world where Cody wins the title and then Punk wins the Rumble.
hmm
And it's Cody and Punk, which they've teased a little bit each Rumble season the last couple of years. Obviously, there's been a lot of chatter about John Cena winning the Rumble and Cena and Cody. There's still that possibility of The Rock doing something, even though the insiders have kind of said, oh, it's not going to happen. So I could see Roman winning and going Roman and Cody one more time, although I wouldn't like to see that because it's been two in a row. Um, I'm gonna put my flag on. I think Cody retains the title, and I think Punk wins. I think we get
hmm
Punk and Cody. That's my men's Rumble prediction.
yeah, I was on a big kick of thinking Cena was going to win it. And then the more I've kind of run through what that would mean, with how long it's been since he's won a match,
hmm
for him to win the Rumble, which is fine, but then to believe that he's also then going to go on to beat Cody. I'm almost thinking that if we're to believe that John Cena might win the title, wouldn't it be interesting if it was more so around his last match, like toward the
Yes.
end of the run? So like
Yes.
why waste it like as his first real match after the Rumble, or maybe he does something at Elimination Chamber. I'm thinking like that's why I'm off that. But then if he's not going to face Cody, I'm having trouble coming up with like a perfect feud for Cena that he hasn't already done because we don't want to see Cena Punk again. I mean, it wouldn't be the end of the world, but that's not what they're going to do.
Yeah.
They have like we've seen Cena Roman before, so like that's not the way to go. So I'm kind of with Steve on Punk Cody is kind of where I'm going, but I don't know. I've never been this unsure
hmm
before, which
Same.
makes me more excited than ever to watch because there are a decent number of options here, more than we're used to, I think.
I
Yeah.
100% agree that this one has me going, like you said, Doug, there's no clear-cut winner this year, I don't think. I think there's a lot of possibilities. Steve, I think you laid out some really interesting ones. I would love to see. I think it would just be such a swerve if Kevin wins and then Sammy wins the Rumble and we end up with them at Mania. That I think that would be an awesome, really unexpected twist. But with all that being said, I agree with both of you. I'm putting my flag in the CM Punk versus Cody is going to be WrestleMania. Um, on the women's side, I would love personally, I think it's in the realm of possibility because she's been on NXT, she's been in the Rumble before. It's not necessarily like a cold debut. I'd love to see Grace come in, Jordan Grace come in and go the distance in the Rumble.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought about that as an option. And honestly, I've not really followed the various women's storylines much on either Raw or SmackDown. But yeah, what a way to make a statement, right? The company's already high on her. They like her. They've been waiting to sign her for a year and a half. They have her in their stable now. Yeah, if she wins it and goes against like a Rhea Ripley, like
Yes.
monster versus monster, that could be really, really cool. I think the other one that I've heard rumblings about is, does Becky Lynch return and win the Rumble?
Yeah.
I think that's a possibility. Um, yeah, I'll go with because you chose that one, I'll pick the other one just so we can even out the odds. I'll pick Becky Lynch.
All right.
Dang, I should have gone first because that's what I struggle. I feel like they're more willing to take risks on the women's side
Mhm.
and do the unexpected, whereas the men's, there tends to be that logic where you can just kind of figure it out. The only other thing I was honestly going to say Becky as well. The only other thing I've been thinking of is, when was the last time they had a title change place at Elimination Chamber to put a swerve on things? Maybe there's been one I'm forgetting, but it's become a place where it's like an automatic retain.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if this is the year where things get reshuffled there, and that's part of their plan right now. I don't know. That's the only other way I'm thinking they might deal with the Rumble result is also have another swerve ahead of time. That makes it harder to build the long build to
Mhm.
WrestleMania when you're gonna swerve it. So it would just be nice to not go into Elimination Chamber assuming whoever is the champ is just gonna hang on.
True. Yeah, it's
Uh,
been a long time since they've shaken it up. I think about there was one with Cena years ago. This would have been 2010 maybe, where the both titles changed at the Chamber and it kind of reshook what WrestleMania was going to be. But you're right, for the last decade at least, the Chamber's just kind of a rubber stamp for the
Yeah.
most part.
And one other thing I have my eye on that I'm sure you've all thought of too, uh, is isn't there just like a beautiful triple threat match lurking if they're willing to bring Brock Lesnar back between Punk, Roman, and Brock Lesnar with Paul Heyman
Oh,
in the middle of
oh,
it?
interesting.
the
Like
three Paul Heyman guys.
I don't know what Brock's social status is to be able to bring him back, but they're bringing back Hulk Hogan. So, um,
Yeah.
if that could happen, if they will let him back in the company with the stink that he had to leave with, boy, would that be fun. That could be really fun. That kind of Paul Heyman rivalry of all the Paul Heyman guys.
Yeah, and that's actually for me, that's the one reason why Punk might not be a winner in the Royal
Mm,
Rumble is because he has that angle ready made right there. And they already teased the stuff with Roman at Survivor Series. So Punk doesn't need to be in a title match. I could
Mhm.
very much see a Punk in the Heyman universe match like that.
mhm.
Yeah.
There's,
Do
I
you
mean,
think, sorry, as guys who
uh,
do booking, it, how many scenarios do you think they have currently that are being considered for the Royal Rumble finale one day before? Do you think it is 100% set in stone? Do you think there's two that they're flip-flopping between two possible endings? What would you guess is the amount of cards on the table that they could play?
That is a great question. I think it probably varies year to year. This year, I think all the things we just described are things that they're thinking about. And
Yep.
it might be so close to the vest that they go, all right, if we go option A, this is the path. Option B, this is the path. Option C. And they might even know, here's the card at WrestleMania. Which one's going to be the title? Nah, not sure yet. So I think to your question, Doug, there's probably two or three scenarios because, like you said, they're all plausible and none of them make the fans riot, right? Like
Yep.
if there's a world in which, Jimmy Uso wins the Royal Rumble, then the fans are furious. But right now we have six guys maybe that could win the Rumble and the fans would buy it. Punk, Sammy, Roman, a returning Lesnar, even a Drew McIntyre,
yeah.
maybe. I mean,
The
I'm
Rock.
missing The Rock, right? Like, so
Mhm.
all of those you would buy as a major blockbuster satisfying ending. So I think they've probably got a couple scenarios and they're just kind of feeling it out. And Triple H is legendarily like terminally online. He is
Yep.
always reading Twitter and reading things. So I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't have a few laid out and he's going to wake up tomorrow morning and make a decision.
Yeah, if I could give one prediction that's just very vague and more just a fun general statement, I think we're going to see the best writing behind a Royal Rumble that we've ever seen in terms of there's going to be moments throughout of things that they might know that they don't want to do for 9 more months or a year and a half, but they're gonna create all these special weaving
Yep.
things in that are things we're teasing things that are coming down the road. And that's why I can't wait. Maybe that's me just being optimistic because I've been disappointed in plenty of
Oh,
Royal Rumbles that just felt
yeah.
Oh,
lazy.
yes.
They're just like
And
lazy battle royals. Nothing's happening.
yeah, I think we're gonna see something pretty special. And
I agree
yeah,
because Triple H is at the helm and
exactly.
he's thoughtful and he cares and he has a long-term vision. He's not like Vince who changed his mind every day. I agree. I think it'll be very well laid out.
Yeah.
I think it all goes back to what you said, Doug. This is the first Rumble in a long time where it just feels like anything can happen. And like Steve said, we're going into this with maybe six guys that if they win and that's what the main event is going into Mania, it's a solid story and fans are bought in. So I think it's going to be a very exciting Rumble, and I think it's cool. It's just up the road from us here in Indy as we're sitting in the greater Chicago area.
And,
Yeah,
and
I
we
thought
did
about
we
going down there for it too, but man, this was the most expensive ticket in the Midwest
Yes.
for WWE I've ever seen.
yeah.
Yes.
And think how over both Roman and Jimmy or I'm sorry, Jay Uso
Hmm.
are. They're both so over, and we kind of just breeze past them as like
Yeah.
possible
Right.
winners, and they're that
Yep.
you won't get a bigger pop of a guy coming out, and we barely even mentioned them, especially Jay. We probably wouldn't see him if he were to win going for the WWE title. It'd probably be the World Heavyweight title, but I don't think they're going to do that. But I mean, he's like Daniel Bryan level,
Hmm.
like
Yes.
6 months before Daniel Bryan won. He's like kind of there where he's going to
Yep.
get that eventually, probably get that push somewhere along the lines where people just want to see it. Like let him have his moment already.
Yeah, and they've teased it a few times. He's challenged,
Yeah.
he's gotten close, and it is built organically such that whatever plans they have, they might have to sit back and go, I don't know, he's really over.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
lot of possibilities. Before we turn things over to Trouble is Brewing, just to put a bow on the Royal Rumble, do either of you think that there is a chance we see AJ Lee return to the ring tomorrow?
possibly.
Man.
Yeah, for a one-off, she comes in, tosses somebody, gets tossed.
Hmm.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of it, but I don't see why not. So I want to see Joe Hendry, not to go back to the guys, but
Yeah,
yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna be fun.
as the champion now, as Impact TNA's main champion now. And
Yeah,
that opens up a whole nother. Do we see Nick Nemeth come back? And now that we have this crossover,
Yeah. The
there's
Hardys.
the
Do the Hardys come
Hardys.
back, right?
There's
yeah,
just so many, there's a lot that they can do. And I mean, there's who knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but I know we've referenced it a few times. But like you said, Doug, this is kind of one of the first years in a long time we're all going, I don't know what's going to happen. There's no clear cut and dry winner. And I think that just makes it way more exciting.
sir.
So, well, speaking of excitement, let's chat about when we stuck a ring in the middle of Revolution Brewing. So, let's chat a little bit about how we got there first. And so, we're flashing back to just about a year ago now, March of 2024. And so, Steve, if you can kind of let's chat about how we got here. So, the Warrior brand, and it wasn't necessarily a plan at this time, but the Warrior brand kind of took a step away and things changed a little bit. But prior to this, the last Warrior show, if memory serves, we had ran was at the Bendix.
Mhm.
And then coming into 2024, things changed a little bit. And you kind of always, chat about how the landscape has changed with professional wrestling. And that's kind of how we got to linking up with Doug and the rest of the team over at Rev.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you guys connected when we were looking at potential sponsors
Hmm.
in 2023, and that led to some conversations with the three of us and the two of us about what could that look like. And I remember one day we were sitting down with Doug in the tap room,
Hmm.
and it was kind of like, oh, well, we couldn't do a show here, and I was like, why not? And that just kind of planted that seed in that discussion, and it still wasn't the option that we went with immediately. We kind of talked about other things and talked over a few different months, and then we kind of kept coming back to why not, right? And I think that ultimately sometimes the why not grows into into a let's do it. And that's what happened over a couple months, a couple beers, a couple meetings, and
Hmm.
we said let's give this a shot. Let's. can we fit it? We walked the space and we looked around and what do we have to move and how would it work and all of those things. And it ultimately came to fruition as it's just so crazy it might work.
It's and Doug was one of the people that I had reached out to about sponsors just in general. And so I think, Doug, maybe this caught your attention just because you are a wrestling fan. So what has been your wrestling story? Did you start watching it childhood? Did you lapse fan for a little bit? What's kind of the story behind your fandom?
Yeah, I don't I was trying to think of like who, if anybody introduced me to it. And I think just as a probably about an 8-year old, I discovered it myself just flipping around the TV. And I'd say the time I got in was when the Rockers were at their prime. So Shawn Michaels when he was on a tag team. So this is probably like 1990. And I don't know what you call that era, but that's when I got in and I would, wrestle with my neighbors. We would dress as the Rockers. We would put little confetti things around our biceps and act them out. And I would never watch a pay-per-view because they were $30, which felt like $1 million at the time. But the grocery store would rent the tapes of them, the VHS tapes, like 6 months after it happened. And there was no internet, so we would find out like 6 months later. I mean, you'd figure out from TV for certain matches, but a lot of them they would never show you highlights. You would just never know what happened until these like VHS tapes came out. So they'd be like $1.99, and my mom would let me rent them, and I'd rent them over and over again. And that's how I'd watch the Royal Rumbles. That was always my favorite. That's why I was so excited to talk about this one. A coincidence that it happens to be tomorrow. Um, but then growing up, I'd go to like one show every 2 years. That's probably right now. I'd say I go to like one show every year. But I famously, in terms of myself, in terms of my claim to fame, is that I was at the '98 King of the Ring where
Oh.
Undertaker threw Mankind off the cell. I have my ticket stub to it, which is like one of my prized nerdy collectible
Yep.
sessions. So that was my first one. Then um, moved to Chicago and just everywhere. I lived in DC and Richmond for a while, and they, frequent stops by the WWE. So I would have just whenever there'd be a Raw or Monday or a pay-per-view, I'd try to go every once in a while. Got to go to the Punk Cena, where Punk won his first
Oh.
WWE title since living here in Chicago. I've lived here 18 years now, so um, yeah, just always, it's not my first passion in life, but it's on the list. So like I'm not as deep as the bloggers and the people who read the blogs, but I do get into the trying to figure out what they're doing. I'm very much that way on the beer side of things. Like I have a beer blog where I share industry, the business side of the business. So watching wrestling, I love just thinking about what they're thinking behind the scenes and how that comes out. So every time I meet up with Steve or you, Dom, I always want to talk about that side of things.
Yeah.
Like I enjoy watching the actual performance, but I love afterwards talking more about the why behind what they're doing and what they're setting up, the long-term storytelling that just fascinates me because I do my own version of that in beer. So it's just stuck with me. And I think, I always tell people when you're in one world, like for me, it's craft beer. The best thing you can do to get creativity flowing is to not just follow what other breweries are doing, find things outside your niche and get in and follow what they're doing. So the more I follow wrestling, the more just like storytelling ideas come to mind for a craft brewery that aren't just what everybody else is doing. So I've still found ways, thanks to you all for making my dream come true of being somehow associated with a amazing wrestling show. So yeah, when you guys first emailed me, I remember like laughing and being like, man, they have no idea how good of a choice they made of who to blindly send this email to. Because I was like, I'm in. The biggest thing was like when it was a sponsorship, it was just I was like, I wanted something more. I was like, and that's why I was like, I want to do something, but I don't just want our logo on a mat or our logo on the apron and some places. Like, what can we do that's better than that? Because, for price of entry, we were like, we want to make this like memorable, and we quickly once Steve was in the building, quickly realized that it was possible in our own brewery. And what better way to leave 300 people with an awesome impression than for them to take in this awesome show and be surrounded by beer barrels, be looking into our brewery and seeing that equipment. What a just unique setting to take in a wrestling show with a great cat with a great lineup as well.
Unique is
Card,
kind
card.
kind kind of a word that we said a lot when we were planning this, and I love reminiscing about this because I remember end of 23, we jumped on a call just like this, kind of just bounced some ideas around, and then Doug, being the awesome gentleman that he is, at the end of 23 said, "Why don't you guys just come to the brewery? We'll have a beer and we'll chat things over." And I think it only took Steve 20 minutes to say, "Yeah, we could put a ring in here. We could so easily do this." And next thing you know, the three of us are walking around with blue painter's tape and measuring tapes, and Doug was getting his team assembled, and that's how we got to this show.
Yeah. It's
So
it's it's crazy with the the magic that a wrestling ring adds. And I think, unique, like you said, is such an important word. It's such a perfect word. When we finished that show, Nick Hausman, who did color commentary for us for a long time of Warrior Wrestling, and has worked covering wrestling and,
mhm.
as a writer and a reporter, etc. He had a couple of he had enjoyed a few Revolution drinks,
Yes.
and he came up to me at the end of the night and he's like, "This was the best wrestling concept show I've ever been to." And I was like, "Thank you." Like it worked, right? Sometimes craft beer, pro wrestling, it just works. And if you nail the execution, it's something special.
And since you said Nick, I just have to throw this out there because Nick is a huge reason why I'm doing what I'm doing. He was a huge help with me pivoting from my last endeavor in wrestling journalism to what I'm doing now. So anytime his name comes up, I just have to say thank you to him and all of his wisdom and guidance that he gave me. And it was great to see him there because that was pretty early into me doing this side of things. So I was able to chat with him a little bit in person. And it's that's kind of a perfect segue, Steve. You're talking about commentary. This was a totally different show, logistics wise, than what Warrior had done in the past. We didn't do it wasn't live streamed, there wasn't commentary, there wasn't, it was filmed, but it wasn't filmed in the traditional aspects that we've done things before. How was that for you? Was it a little bit different putting things together in the weeks, days, months leading up to the show?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously we didn't live stream it, so we didn't have the whole live production aspect of
Hmm.
usually we have Sorg and his whole crew coming out from Pittsburgh, and we've got, all the cameras, all the uplinks, all the timing, all the counting down matches and video packages and that kind of thing. And without that element, we were able to focus a little bit more on just having fun in the room and
Hmm.
then capturing that fun on video and post-producing it and getting out to the world. So yeah, I think it was honestly it's great when we live stream, but
Hmm.
it also is just a great weight off of our shoulders to not live stream and just be able to let it be more like a concert for the house
Hmm.
instead of a production for somebody watching elsewhere.
Absolutely. And one other big difference, and Eric actually mentioned this on a previous promoters corner that we had done when we talked about the Joey Janela versus Ego Anthony street fight at the Stadium series. Those shows had always been marketed as super family friendly, and Eric had said they did a phenomenal job of having a street fight and telling that story, but keeping it family friendly. We were running in a brewery. We didn't have to worry about being family friendly this time around. So it was just kind of a different atmosphere as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a bar feel, right? But not in like a dangerous
Right,
or
right.
way, but in like a fun frat party
Hmm.
with wrestling way. Like I think about going way back on the early independent scene in the Chicago area, the LWF from the late 90s, which I went to some of their shows. Famously, CM Punk comes from the LWF, but they described their original shows as we're having a party with wrestling.
Hmm.
And I felt like doing it in the tap room felt like it was a party with wrestling, right? Like everybody's having drinks, and when people are having drinks, they tend to be a little bit rowdier. They tend to cheer a little more. They tend to laugh a little more. They tend to get into things a little bit more. It felt like a party with wrestling.
It's it. And Doug and you and your team just did such a great job bringing in like the food vendors, and it was just like everything you needed under one roof. And we had 300 people there for an awesome party.
Yeah, we did not know what to expect, but man, the execution couldn't have been more perfect.
So, and that's so we're we're gonna watch this match along. And this is Trevor Outlaw's open challenge. On the logistical side, Steve, I know you have to get event insurance for any event you run. This one probably came pretty close to one of the times you may have actually had to file a claim on that, because you had a 6'8", very angry Lance Archer in a sold out brewery with lots of toys.
Yeah, well, it's interesting, peeling the curtain back a little bit. Um, for the illusion of the audience, yes, it's a wild, out of control,
Right.
dangerous spectacle that maybe damaged the tap room and would get us kicked out. The reality is that these are total pros,
Yeah.
right? And you saw them walking into the space before we opened doors, talking about what was able. We moved things, set things, created set pieces for them to work with. In my other line of working with schools, it's no different than when I've done like building walkthroughs with inspectors or architects or things where you walk around and go, oh, well, we can do this here, we can do that there. We got to think about this. We have to think about the flow of how the crowd would move here. It's the same way that Lance and Trevor approach their work as professional
Hmm.
wrestlers, right? So they look around the space knowing that their job is to create the illusion of chaos for the audience so the audience can lose itself in that suspended disbelief of chaos. And so how do you look around and see what is here to use to create that illusion of chaos while at the same time being totally professional, totally
Hmm.
safe, and not hurting anything at the host's venue. So, and I think they did that very well.
They did, yeah. And like you said, both just absolute professionals. Trevor's the rudest professional ever, but he's still a professional.
Yeah, we still hate him. He's a professional, but we hate him.
Uh-huh. Yeah, exactly. So, I am gonna get this pulled up, and we can relive Trevor airing his grievances with you, Steve, with the crowd, and with uh, with everything else that that happened that night. So I love how this starts with this just starts with Trevor coming out, and the crowd already doesn't like him.
Well, yeah, just naturally.
Didn't even let you get through your speech, Steve.
Yeah, that's what he does. Yeah, I don't have audio on my end, Dom, so I can't hear if he's trash talking yet, but I would imagine he's being a pain in the butt from the moment he walks through the curtain.
I mean, is his mouth moving?
Fair.
I mean, we talked about this a couple, and now he's yelling at Eric and Eric didn't even do anything.
Yeah.
And we've talked about this a couple of times, but just the view of having this it was just such a cool view. You've got the giant flag in the background we saw in that earlier shot, and over here, all of those barrels filled to capacity with beer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Doug and I have talked about this before many times. I'm a mark for venues. I
Mhm.
love venues. I love wrestling in specific venues. I love concerts in venues. And this place screams what it is. This is a tap room. We've got beer barrels. We've got the giant American flag. We've got the Chicago flag. We've got that huge, beautiful bar. It speaks to time and place. So, like Dom, you'll remember this. We ran the Tinley Park Convention Center
Yep.
several years back, and we had a huge show there. Will Ospreay, Thunder Rosa, and we brought the lights down. We had our stage, but outside of the ring, the lit ring area, you couldn't see anything. It was just a blackness. It was just a void on the video, and except for the ring. And that's fine. It has a certain feel to it, but I really like when you can feel the venue. When whether you're there live or you're viewing it afterwards on YouTube, you see it and just get a sense of place and time, and that it's happening in a specific space. And this the venue lent itself to that. Like it was a unique event in a unique place at a unique time.
Very well said. Yeah, it just I mean it goes back to we threw a party in a brewery and there was a wrestling ring there. It just really lent itself to that atmosphere.
Yeah.
So, um Trevor's doing what he does. And I know Steve, you don't have audio, but I just love how the Principal Steve nickname has kept, even though you're no longer a principal.
Yeah. School district administrator Steve now.
Yeah, it's a little too long.
Yeah, it just doesn't work.
So we've got the crowd egging him on, calling him an asshole, just like you did to start this whole segment here, Steve. And this is a total side note, but we just got a good view of it. Doug, those lanyards and the passes, those were such a great touch.
Oh yeah. As a fan of tickets who misses them and because they've mostly gone away, I was like, we got to bring these back. So give
Yeah.
everybody a little memory to take with them.
I'm the same way. I miss having a paper ticket stub from concerts, from shows, from whatever.
Yeah, Doug and I have talked about this before during lunch or over drinks that we each have displays of all the
Hmm.
great tickets of things that we've been to. So, yeah, I think it was a great keepsake for people. And again, just creates that sense of place and time. You're going to see that on your wall. So, in Eric's basement, for example, Eric has a couple posters of things that we've done or things that we've gone to over the years. And he's got a few of his VIP tags from an event we did with AEW and a
Hmm.
StarCast event and a few other things. And every time I'm at Eric's house, I see those. I'm immediately transported back, which people will be, um, when they see their Trouble is Brewing lanyard.
Exactly. And so now we're getting into some more of Revolution things here. Doug, what can you tell us about our this mascot here, the anti-hero?
Anti-hero, that's the Hop General, named after our best-selling IPA, the beer that kind of put Revolution Brewing on the map. So, the beer when it was just a draft beer at our original brew pub, everybody called it a hop bomb. So that's how when it came time to actually put it in a can a year or two later, that's how this idea of making it a hop looking general came about. And then a few years later, we invested in a costume and then have invested further to get a better costume. And now it's looking pretty good enough to be the centerpiece of a wrestling match.
And he's carrying down that pretty awesome belt to go along with it. And
Uh,
unfortunately, Trevor kicked him right below the belt. And now here comes Lance to make him pay.
Yeah, and so the Lance piece was a lot of fun. Doug
Yeah.
and I had talked about this. Eric has long been a fan of a surprise,
Hmm.
and I always joke that I wear two hats in our wrestling organization. I am Booker Steve and Promoter Steve, and Booker Steve would love to surprise the audience with a major star they didn't know was going to be there. But Promoter Steve thinks if I'm going to have a major star there, I want to tell everyone on earth
Hmm.
so that they buy tickets. And when we sold this show out immediately, that created the ability to hold a couple aces up our sleeves. And we actually had Lance booked before we put tickets on sale. And we said to ourselves, if we need to, we can announce Lance. But how great would it be to sell out and not even announce Lance? And that's what we did. So fans just knew they were going to see Trevor Outlaw versus someone. And I don't think any of them had in mind it was going to be the 7 foot tall murder hawk monster throwing his carcass around the tap room.
I think it's surprised all 300 people in there. And his music is so identifiable. As soon as that Everybody Dies hits, you know who's coming through the curtain. And he's making Trevor pay here. Trevor's trying to plead his case, but Lance isn't listening. And I mean, Doug, did you ever think you would have a 7 foot tall wrestler chopping somebody in the middle of your tap room?
I certainly didn't. And yeah, just I love what Steve said. It like the I don't know, patience is the right word, but I guess the discipline to be
Mhm.
willing to hold one of your aces back. And I think that really left everybody feeling like they got their money's worth and then some. The fact that we were able to sell this thing out without needing to tell people that Lance was going to be there, who I think fought either the next day or maybe 2 days later on an AEW pay-per-view. Like
Yes.
pretty
Yes, he was
cool.
on Revolution.
Yeah.
I can't remember if it was the next day or the day after that, but it was definitely that weekend.
Yep, absolutely. Because it actually changed his travel plans a little bit for us the week of because they weren't sure if he was going to have a match the way that storylines were playing out. And I think a couple days before, he's like, "Yep, I'm going out to wherever it was, North Carolina, etc." So um, we had to coordinate a little bit with AEW, but yeah, I mean, just great. Sometimes we are the benefactors of, or we benefit from really fortuitous timing. And Lance happened to be getting pushed in that big man match, and here he was in front of you in Chicago.
And
One
they're
of
exploring the space here. Again, D Doug thinking I'd never thought I would have a full-on bar brawl in my brewery.
Yeah, I just want to say, like, one of my favorite parts of this whole event was our employees, all the
Yes.
ones that came, getting to see what was possible because, we're the biggest independent brewery in the whole state out of 200 and some. And when you get that big, things can get a little more serious. And the chances you take, the risks you take, you kind of can lose that risk appetite after a while. And we used to do some pretty organic things like this way back in the day. And this was a challenge to myself and others of like, let's show like that anything's possible here. And this match was it really came together in many ways here. The including of our anti-hero, the him going around the brewery. I don't even think I realized he gave him a bath in sparkling water there. Um, so good.
I will echo that, Doug. My favorite part of the experience was seeing everyone behind the bar
Hmm.
and everyone in our VIP area react to it because obviously you and I, the three of us in this call, know the magic of live pro wrestling, but people
Mhm.
who only know it conceptually don't have an idea of what it's like to see it in front of you, in front of your eyes, and to see them get giddy of like, oh, he's gonna hit him again, and like just so cool for me to see them experience it.
Just to build on that, while you were in the ring, Steve, doing this with Trevor, I went to the bar and I said, you guys might want to step back a little bit. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know something's going to happen over here. And they were like, what do you mean? I was like, listen, just you might want to step back a little. And then you see the looks on their face, you see them filming. It's cool to see them experiencing the magic of a pro wrestling show that up close and personal for the first time.
Yeah.
Rewatching this, I'm seeing so to know how important this was to me, two of my best friends not only came to the show, but one lives in Charlotte, the other lives in Columbus. Not short drives.
No.
The Charlotte one, of course, flew. They came in for the show, so I put them in the front row. And when Trevor came out, they have no idea who Trevor is, of course, because they're from out of town. They were in his face yelling at him. They got so into it. And both these guys like wrestling, but aren't like too deep in it. But they just got so into it that night, and they were screaming at him like he had betrayed them or something.
The
I
best.
saw him every
Oh,
time they go by him in the front row. I see my buddies just like furious yelling at them.
yeah. It's, so obviously we didn't have kids here. This was a 21 and over show, but I love it at our shows when we have a lot of kids
Yeah.
because you get that same vibe of like these 12-year-olds are like, screw you. And like, and the wrestlers are playing to the kids. And it's that idea of everyone chooses to buy in. Everyone in the audience says, look, I know it's a show, but I'm going to live for the next couple hours like it's not a show. And that just makes it so much fun.
Great example of that right now is the fans are getting to chop Trevor up in the front row.
Yeah. Yeah, this match could not have been more perfectly executed by these two.
Yes.
Exactly what it's supposed to be. Um, and when we laid it out, we knew we were getting some incredible technical wrestling coming and flying coming in the main
Mhm.
event. We had a tag team match with bodies everywhere. We had just a straight stiff arm brawl with Bennett and Warhorse earlier. This match needed to be a spectacle of a monster just beating up a bad guy left and right, and it's exactly what they delivered.
Was this their first time working together?
I think
Yep.
so, yeah.
Amazing.
And shout out to Henry for running 12 different locations to get the shots that we're using here and to the Wrestling with Unicorns to running around and getting these awesome shots. Just like this
Yeah.
one of
I
Trevor
forgot the under
trying to
the ring
hide under
shot.
the ring.
Oh my God.
It was
Yeah,
worth a try.
I had no idea this quality of filming was taking place as I was watching it. I mean, I saw them moving around, but I wasn't thinking how good this would look in post-production.
Our
Yeah,
and credit to Henry for being an editing whiz too and putting this all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did a really, really good job. Because, like I mentioned earlier, too, this was not a full production crew like we usually bring in from Pittsburgh. This was Henry, Martin, and his brother, and I think Jen Doe we had on
Yep.
camera. And just, we had good cameras, but it wasn't like the full setup we normally do. And Henry made it look like a full 4K production here in post-production.
So Trevor's trying to get one up over on Lance, and I guess a chair is a pretty good idea if you're trying to beat up someone that's 7 foot and you're not.
Somehow I feel like it always comes back in Trevor's face, though. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's. Uh-oh. Look who's back. What were you just saying about it coming back to bite him?
There you go. We have a great still photo of this moment from Nick, one of
Oh,
our still photographers.
So rough night in the office for Trevor, but I think all 300, I mean, you look at how many people have their phones out, they're grabbing that moment. I think all 300 people in that brewery will never forget that match or any match that was on this card.
Yeah, that was our goal, right? Like Doug said earlier, you want people to leave feeling like they got more than their money's worth. And our hope with this match was hopefully you got your money's worth with the card you knew you were getting, and then you got this bonus of something you didn't know you were getting. And
Mhm.
man, was it fun.
there's still
And
one more cherry on the top coming.
Oh yeah, I was
oh,
going to say the
yes.
the anti-hero has not yet gotten his revenge. We have another great still photo of the moment that's about to happen here.
I have it in 4 frames, so like revenge. So good. That's my
Quick
buddy.
Chicago. Oh, nice. Oh, he is absolutely having the time of his life. I was going to say, quick Chicago note. The anti-hero in this segment is played by Gino Orlandi,
Hmm.
who's a great pro wrestler from Chicago. Also, his family owns the oldest statuary in the city of Chicago. They make
Really?
statues. It's an unbelievable story of his great great grandfather immigrated from Italy and founded this statuary on the west side. And so Gino having a great Chicago connection from his family to Chicago's biggest craft brewery and putting down Chicago's biggest pain in the neck, Trevor Outlaw.
That's I mean I obviously I know Gino from being part of the shows, but I did not know about that. That's a really cool fact.
Yeah, interesting dude. There's Trevor in pain. Always good to
Uh,
see.
I mean, Trevor has been he's been, kicked by the anti-hero. He's gotten a cake to the face.
Yeah, he's, my favorite shows of ours are the ones where Trevor ends up embarrassed.
I mean, he's rambling on right now about how much he hates Revolution, he hates the mascot, he hates you, he probably hates me too because I'm part of this. And Lance gets one last laugh.
Man,
Uh,
what a good day at the office, huh?
right,
Yeah.
right. And so one thing that to kind of close this up, one thing that I love about that is Doug, we see a couple of members of your team, and we alluded to this earlier, but I just remember, and your team was just so awesome. They were all just grade A. We had such a great time working with them, but they had never experienced live pro wrestling before. And so I think when you brought this to some of them, they're like, "We're doing what?" And I think it was actually right after this match, I was standing in that doorway that we were using as kind of like the entrance go position. And one of your photographers comes up to me and goes, "This is the most fun I have ever had at a work event. Like, this is so cool."
Oh, that's awesome to hear. Yeah. I'm so glad they all got to see it. We kind of expanded our horizons. Like I
Mhm.
said, not that it was a risk, but took a little
Mhm.
risk, do
Mhm.
something different, and now the sky's the limit.
And I think I had texted it to you, but I remember after the ring was loaded in by Merrill and his team, that's kind of when it became real. And I just remember your team being like, Can we get in there?" So, yeah, sure, jump on in. And I just remember them being in there and they had never been in a ring before. And they were like, "Oh my God, I did not think it was going to be like this or like this." And they were, dropping down to one knee, like, "Wow, this is." And the picture that we got of your whole team in the ring, they all look like they're having the time of their life, and we hadn't even technically finished setup yet.
Yep. Yeah, a lot of people trust it. I earned the trust of a lot of people through this. So it's like you just got to trust me, and
Yep.
you guys delivered. And I just props to you guys for how, I mean, there's being on top of things, and then there was this next level of like you guys were true pros. You had thought of everything. Everything was planned out. I had no idea that the entrances were going to be as flashy. Like,
Hmm.
obviously, there's no pyrotechnics, but the way you make up for that with the lights, man, did that look good. That was so beyond what I expected to see from the wrestler entrances with the curtain. And again, over the top from what I've been to really small indie shows, and so I kind of had those in my head, and you guys were up there. I mean, that was incredible.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we've always believed that you're never going to have WWE level production, but there has to be some production element to it for a wrestling show because it's part of what just sucks you in, you know? And we've done shows where it's just a curtain. We've done a couple like that, but
Hmm.
generally we love lights, sound. We want it to feel like you're seeing a concert every time somebody comes to the ring. And so, especially for those folks who had the tickets that were on the aisle, they were in
Yes.
it, right? Like the lights, the sound, the wrestlers right there. We wanted that to be a really special experience. I'm glad that it came together and it was one for them.
One of the best parts for us is it really did connect to other things we do as a brewery. So like we've been the sponsor of C2E2,
Hmm.
the Comic-Con of Chicago, and since 2012, I think. So like our involvement in pop culture and building beer brands, our IPAs, which are all named after heroes, there was always a natural fit for wrestling there. So like there's a very popular hop used in IPAs called Nelson. So I was always like, oh my gosh, we got to make that our wrestling themed one. So we've done that. That beer is actually coming out again next month. It's just like a
Nice.
small one-off beer we make every year or two. And but yeah, just getting to connect these kind of things we've always done, but really bring them to life into something that's not just making a wrestler character on an IPA, which is fun, but how do you make that come alive? You all helped us make that happen.
We were
Happy to
happy
do
to do
so.
it. I think, I mean, as much fun as the fans had and your staff and everybody had, I think we all had just as much fun. I mean, it was just, I mean, we've said it a few times, but Steve, you said you're a mark for buildings, and that building just, once we had everything in there, it gave an atmosphere, it gave a vibe.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've done the show or a version of the show in so many different places
Hmm.
that you always figure out and make it work. And I remember when we were laying out, well, we'll put the talent upstairs, but we've got to
Hmm.
bring them forward. And all these little things don't matter at the end of the day when you get in the room and you feel how the show feels in the room.
Hmm.
And that show felt special in the room. It was the right room, even from just the logistical sense of like sound, right? Sound reverberated off those walls. So when fans cheered, it got loud, it stayed loud. And it was just again just a great night at the office, and like we said before, a perfect merging of beer and wrestling fans, the culture, it just fit hand in glove.
Absolutely. I mean, we've chatted a lot about this, but any closing thoughts from either of you?
Man, I would just say when someone sends you an email and it just feels right, make sure you take the phone call, you know? That's what I've got, we get pitched a lot of things and you can't, there's so many, you can't even respond to them all. But when something feels right, pick up the phone, have a beer, and magic has a tendency to happen. So thank you both again for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd echo that, right? Sometimes I have a theory from back when I was dating. I would always say go on every date in the
Mhm.
sense of like you never know when you got to test something and see. And similarly too for the other side for doing wrestling shows. So sometimes folks are like, oh, could you do a show here? Could you do a show there? Like, nah. But you know what? You have to think about it and say, you know what? Yeah, maybe a wrestling show would fit in that location, in that festival, in that place, and anywhere where people are gathered and you can entertain and thrill those people, wrestling fits. And
Hmm.
that's, from the staff who might not have been sure what was coming into their place of work, to the people who love the beer and bought a ticket just to see a unique thing. Once you see wrestling, once you've been at wrestling live, you can never knock it again. It just is so awesome and so inclusive and so much fun.
Yep.
Agreed. And
Zone.
again, thank you to how awesome your staff was for hosting us.
Our pleasure. Hope to do it again.
All right, well, that's gonna do it for this episode. If you're at C2E2, check out Revolution Brewing setup. You cannot miss it. It's the yard. It's usually a giant green carpet right in the middle of the show floor, and they're serving up some delicious brews. All right, well, thank you both for taking the time, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us, Tom.
guys.